Hello friends, it's been a long time since I've released a video and I'm sorry about that. Finding a new place to live certainly takes a lot of time. But now that's done, I can slowly get back into the YouTube game. Today we're going to revisit an old friend, ROM-inator Resurrections for the Macintosh 128K, 512K, and Plus. Check out my earlier video on how to build one if you've not seen it already. Also note that Carol's Mac Mods, who makes the ROM-inator, updated the circuit board earlier this year to make soldering much easier. The product is available in two kits, standard and luxury, and both kits include all the parts you'll need for the build. The main purpose of this video is to show you how to create longer boot chimes. So instead of hearing truncated sounds like this, you can hear the full boot chime in all its glory like this. I'll also talk a little bit about the nifty app named SoundMaster and tell you how to avoid trouble when flashing the stock 64K ROM. So let's get started. All the technical details about the ROM-inator can be found on the Big Mess of Wires website. Note that it talks about the startup sound. I personally like to call it the boot chime because a program called SoundMaster offers a startup feature that doesn't replace the boot chime and instead plays a sound during the boot sequence.
Computing now, Captain. Computing now, Captain.
So whenever I say boot chime in this video, I'm referring to the bong sound that you hear when you power on or restart your vintage Mac. If we scroll down a bit further, Steve Chamberlain gives us the technical details on how to create your own custom boot chime by saying the startup sound, or boot chime, is stored in a 22 kHz 8-bit unsigned format. The free audio tool Audacity can convert WAV or MP3 files to this format. By default, the sound will play for 666 milliseconds at startup, but with an additional ROM modification, this can be changed to any interval between 0 and 1.3 seconds. Clicking the additional ROM modification link opens a new page with detailed instructions. Even though this page is packed with helpful info, I still needed to email Steve Chamberlain to ask for clarifications. Steve kindly gave me a much better understanding of the process, which I'm now going to show to you. Here's what Steve Chamberlain's FlashTool app looks like. You use this app to flash ROMs and sounds to the ROM-inator. You can see that the startup sound, aka boot chime, has a file size limit of 28,672 bytes. Sounds this big are 1.30 seconds long. FlashTool is smart though and will warn you if you try to flash a sound file that's bigger than 28,672 bytes. Let's now try a practical example. I have the short Quadra boot chime flashed to the ROM-inator inside my Macintosh 512K. And it's one of the sounds that comes with the ROM-inator. You can also find it on the Big Mess of Wires ROM-inator product page in the download section under a link named Data Files for In-System ROM Updating. So I'll go ahead and turn on the power so you can hear it. I like it, but it ends too abruptly. It's not the full duration sound. So now I'm going to show you step by step how to create a sound file that's almost identical to a real Macintosh Quadra 700's boot chime. And then you can take that knowledge to create your own sounds and flash them to your own ROM-inator. We start by downloading the normal uncompressed WAV file that Downtown Doug Brown has kindly posted in the 68K MLA forum. I now have Doug's Quadra 700 boot chime open in the free audio editor Audacity, and you can see that I'm using version 3.6.0. Let's begin by stretching the waveform vertically so we can see it a bit better, and then we can play it. Much better than the truncated version, which I also have here open. But if we look at the waveform, I'm spotting two problems. First, we can see 1.30, that's seconds over here. It's longer than the 1.30 second limit, which would make the file size larger than 28,672 bytes. The second problem is it's not as loud as it could be, And we can tell that by all of this space above and below the waveform. Let's fix the file size problem first. Before we do anything, we have to decide how to reduce the duration so that the file size doesn't exceed the limit. And we could chop off the part that's after 1.30 seconds and then fade out a little bit of the section at the end so it doesn't just abruptly stop. Or we could change the tempo, which means we wouldn't have to chop off anything, and tempo changes would make it fit within whatever duration we want. However, that is going to change the speed at which it plays back, basically altering the sound. And if you look at this, we really wouldn't be chopping off that much, so I suggest we do the truncate and fade rather than change the tempo. And here's the process. First of all, we press Command A to select the entire sound. And then you'll notice this section at the bottom, it's called Selection. The lower field is showing us where it ends, 1.392 seconds. And the upper field is showing where it begins, which of course is 0 seconds. And so because we want to truncate everything from 1.30, I click right here, just to the left of the decimal point, and type a 1. Don't type a space, and then just type a 3. And you can see over here, it has selected everything from 1.30 all the way to the end, 1.392. Now we want to delete this section, and you can't just press the delete key because that would delete this little character here. And so we want to go up to the Edit menu and delete. And as I said before, if we save it like this, it's going to end too abruptly, right? We want it to fade to 0. Now the point is, from what point do you want to start the fade? So we could start it right on the tail end, and then type fade out, and then select all and play. We can undo that and try to fade. Looks like it's starting to decline here, so we'll try this. See how that sounds. And we'll do fade out. Select all, play again. I think I like the original, so I'm going to undo that. 1, 2, 3, I went 3 ticks over. And then we'll do fade out. I think I like this better. Now I could go ahead and save the file at this point, but as I told you earlier, it's not quite as loud as it could be. And on my iMac, I'm using an iMac right here to edit. You've got great speakers, a great amplifier, but you don't have that on your vintage Macs. And so it's important that you get these peaks as close to the very top and bottom as possible. And again, over here at left, this is the stray spike that is preventing us from easily normalizing. And I'll show you what normalize is in a second here. But basically bringing up all of these peaks to 0. Now you might be inclined to choose amplify, but the problem is that if you amplify it, say, let's just say by 3 dB, the reason it's not allowing me to apply is because allow clipping is disabled. And now it will let me apply it, but it will clip. And what clipping means is if I amplify it, it's going to clip off this little stray spike here. And if you allow clipping to happen, sometimes you'll hear these strange little clicks or pops. In other words, undesirable effects. You don't want to clip your audio, basically. So let's reduce the amplitude of this stray spike. And the procedure for doing that is we select this particular area, and then there is this little icon here, select fit selection to width, and that'll zoom in on that selection. And then we see that this is the spike here, but I want to start it about where it crosses the 0 point, so I'm going to zoom in on it more. About like this. And that way, so it's just crossing the 0 point. you've got the wave spike down and then it's going back to 0. So this, I'm going to reduce the amplitude of this, and I'm going to use amplify with a negative number. So let me try 2 dB, and then I'm going to zoom out and take a look at that. The spike that was going all the way to the bottom is now reduced in amplitude. Now we'll select all again, and then we go up and type normalize. Normalize is right here. And we want to normalize it to 0 dB, which means we're going to maximize it to the uppermost and lowermost peaks to be as loud as it can be. And boom, there it is. Now you might say, well, there's still some space here, and how do we resolve that? And you can see what's causing it over here at left, right? These spikes are preventing it from going all the way. It's better than before, and when you're creating your own sounds, you could opt to just leave it like this, but I suggest doing a little bit more fine-tuning. So we're basically going to repeat the same thing we did before, except we have more spikes to contend with here. And really, the procedure would be the same. You would select one, and then type in amplify, and then reduce it by a couple dB, or 1 dB, you know, it's really up to you. And we'll get, sometimes you may need to zoom in to get more precision, but I want to get the 0 crossing points, right? And then I'm going to do amplify again, repeat amplify. So it'll reduce the amplitude by the same amount, and then we'll zoom out and take a look. Okay, so probably this spike will give us some trouble, so let's go ahead and deal with him now. And he is the longest one, so I'll zoom in on him more. And then we'll select this. And then we'll do our amplify again. Then zoom out. Okay. And if we look at the peaks, probably this guy is going to prevent us from getting maximum volume. So we'll zoom in on him. There we go. Repeat amplify, zoom out. Okay, so let's normalize in this case. And we're getting a lot closer. In fact, if you don't want to fiddle too much, you may be inclined to just save the file here. And if we select all and play it, it plays just as good as it did before. It's just louder. So at this point, let's go ahead and save out this file. Now on Steve Chamberlain's website, his instructions suggested that you go into Audio Setup, Audio Settings, and change the project sampling rate to 22 kilohertz, which is 22050, before you save the file. And to save it, we go up here. We want to choose Export. Now there are multiple exports here, but Export Audio is what we want to choose. And unless you click Don't Show This Again, you will be presented with this option. We want to export it to our computer, and we need to save it into a RAW format. So it could be that your computer will be set up to auto default to AIFF or something else, but what you need to choose in the format section here is Other Uncompressed Files. And then you'll need to make sure that if something other than RAW is chosen in the header, you need to make sure that RAW is selected. It needs to be 22050 Hertz, a mono sound, and this must be set to unsigned. Often it will default to signed 8-bit or signed 16-bit. It must be unsigned. So these are the important selections here. 22 kilohertz, RAW, unsigned, 8-bit, PCM. And then we click Browse. And I'm going to type a name that's easy to understand, Quadra 700 normal. There's two types, and that's why I call it a normal one. And it's 1.30 seconds long. Click Save, and then Export. And here is the file that I just saved. Doing Get Info, we see that it is 28,665 bytes. So great. This is coming in lower than 28,672. So no file size problems at all. We now need to get the file over to our vintage Mac. And the best way to do that is with Big Mess of Wires FloppyEMU. Unfortunately, we can't just drag and drop the file to our FloppyEMU's SD card. Instead, we need to use the mini vMac emulator to move your raw sound file onto a disk image. And to make this super easy for you, I created a zip archive of all the files that you see here, and I put a download link in the text description below. As you can see, I prepared 2 disk images, and then inside the mini vMac stuff folder, in addition to including vMac, I also included a README file that describes the process that I'm going to show you now. The first thing you need to do is to make sure you have a way to create Stuffit SIT files on your modern Mac. And the best way to do that is to use Stuffit Deluxe 16. I've confirmed it works even on Apple Silicon Macs running macOS Sonoma and is downloadable from Macintosh Garden. When installed, it puts a little C-clamp icon in your menu bar. So if I click to select our raw file in the Finder and then click on the C-clamp icon, we can see we're presented with a variety of options, and we want to choose Legacy SIT. Do not choose Stuff up here. That will make a SIT-X file, which your vintage Mac and mini vMac cannot unstuff. You need to go down here to Legacy, so always remember that. This is really the only feature I use Stuffit Deluxe for. Choose Legacy, then come over here and choose .sit, stuff. In other words, we are compressing our sound file so it won't be damaged when we import it into mini vMac. If you don't compress it, it will be damaged. So always compress, and that's the purpose of having Stuffit Deluxe. And again, these SIT files can be decompressed with Stuffit Expander in mini vMac, but version 5.5. which requires us to boot mini vMac into system 7.5, and that is why I made this convenient disk image for you. Now, you want to drag this onto mini vMac 26. Don't drag it on top of mini vMac because this version of mini vMac emulates a Mac Plus, and even though it will boot system 7.5.5, Stuffit Expander version 5.5 will crash. This 26 version, this is emulating a Mac 2, and you can boot system 7.5.5 and run Stuffit Expander 5.5 in order to decompress the SIT file that we just created. So just take it and drag it right on top. And we see it boots in grayscale. I'm not sure why it does that, but if you want to change it to color, you just go up to the monitor's control panel and click colors. I normally don't bother just because it takes time, but you can if you want to. What we want to do is notice these icons down at the bottom of the screen. I created these for you just for the sake of convenience, but we want to import our file with, well, import FL. Double click to open it, and then we want to press Control O. And we want to import not the raw file, but the SIT file. And we'll do that. And we always want to save it to the desktop just for the sake of convenience. So click the desktop button, leave the file name the same, and click Save. Then we do Command Q to quit. Here is our SIT file. We want to expand that with Stuffit Expander, drag and drop. And there we go. It's expanded. And now we want to copy this file. I'm going to do Control F to get out of full screen mode. We want to copy this file to our hard disk system 3.2 disk. That's because my Mac 512 cannot boot system 7.5.5. So just to mount this, you just drag it and drop it. And I'll do Control F, full screen again. And whenever you open this disk image, you'll see these 2 windows open automatically, right to the point where you need to copy files, and we'll just copy it on over. Boom, and there we go. And then you can choose whether you want to leave it on your system 7.5 disk or not. I'm not going to do it. I like everything clean and tidy. Then inside the Startup Sounds folder, you know, you've got all these folders that I've created for you here. And so if you want to file it nicely, you can, because this is a 1.30 second file, you can just drag it into that appropriately named folder. And then it'll be easy to find when we start using our vintage Mac. And then you can just drag this to the trash to eject it. And then we go up here to Special Menu and shut down Mini vMac. Now here in the Finder, again, we see all of these files are in my archive, JDW ROM-inator video. This is the HD20 System 3.2 disk we just worked on. And down here is my SD card entitled FloppyEMU. Yours is probably named something different. And some of the files will be same on yours. These 3 folders are usually on every SD card that comes with a FloppyEMU, but I added some other files, as you can see. But basically what you want to do is you're going to copy the version from your hard disk over to your FloppyEMU, right? You just copy it over. I'm not going to do that because I already have a copy on there. And you can see it right here. Here's my copy. And then once it's copied to your FloppyEMU SD card, then from now on, I would suggest you just work straight off of your SD card. No need to use this version anymore. And you would just drag it and drop it on top of Mini vMac, not the 126, because this is System 3.2, so you'd want to do it on the Mac Plus version of Mini vMac like this. And there it is, right? It boots up right away. So that is how you move files from your Mac to a disk image and get it on your SD card for the very first time. And then you can work off your SD card from there. Next, you'll need to put your SD card into your FloppyEMU. Mine is a Model B, not the newest revision, so the LCD looks a little different, but the procedure is the same. And then, with the power turned off, note power cord, it's definitely off, and you want to make sure that your FloppyEMU is connected. Now this is a Mac 512, and you would do this on a 512K or plus. You cannot do this on a 128K Mac, meaning FlashTool requires more than 128K of RAM. So it's impossible to flash in system. And if you have a ROM-inator installed on a 128K Mac, it's a joy to use. But to flash new sounds, icons, whatever, the only way to do it is to remove the 2 chips. That's right, you're gonna have to open the machine, access the motherboard, pull out the 2 chips that are on the ROM-inator, and then you have 2 choices. The first choice is you could go out and buy a universal programmer like the T48. Keikoba, if you're watching this, yes. I finally did resort to buying one. And actually, I bought this to help out somebody in the community. This gentleman approached me, and he's a hard drive collector, and he has a hyperdrive. Well, it's the MMI 10 megabyte drive, which is the same as my hyperdrive. And his was defective, and he wanted me to dump one of the ROM chips on it to see if replacing that would fix his drive. And I risked destroying my unique, valuable, and rare drive by doing this, but I thought, well, this ultimately will be for the greater good because he will share the file with the community, and later he did. So I had to desolder the chip and very nervously do it too, you know. And ultimately, I was able to extract the contents of that EEPROM using this T48. So yeah, it can come in helpful and handy, but you're gonna need a Windows PC. Yeah, if you're Mac only, that's not so fun, but you're gonna need a Windows PC because the software to use this is Windows only. However, I told you there are 2 options. The other option is Mac only. If you have another Mac, not just a 128K, but also a 512K or plus with another ROM-inator installed in that other machine, then you can pull out the 2 chips. Yeah, you're gonna have to access the motherboard and unsocket the 2 chips into your from your 128K Max ROM-inator. Take those chips and put them into the ROM-inator that's installed in your other computer, which means you're going to have to pull out the chips that are already in there, put in your 128K Max ROM-inator's chips in there, flash them in system, then pull them out and put them back into your 128K Mac. It's kind of fiddly, time-consuming, and convoluted, but it will work. And you don't need Windows. But, you know, a universal programmer would also do it. all said, if you want to flash in system, that's the best way to do it. And the best way to do that is with a 512K Mac or Plus, because you can't do it on 128K. And this machine sitting next to me is beautiful because it's both a 128K Mac and a 512K Mac. And you might say, how is that possible? And the answer is the vMac switcher. At the flip of a switch, I can convert this machine to the measly 128K of RAM that the original Mac in 1984 shipped with. Or when I actually want to have fun with it and have usable amount of RAM, I can just flip that dip switch again and have 512K. So if you've not seen my video on the vMac switcher, be sure to check that out because it's really a must-have product. And it makes your life much easier because then you can use FlashTool to do in-system flashing. Okay, I will now power on. And then I'll push the middle button here, which will take us to the menu, and we'll right arrow over, which is going to take us down to disk emulation mode. And normally it's set on Macintosh 3.5 floppy, but we want to set it on Macintosh hard disk, CD-ROM. And it says to turn off computer, but we can actually just push the power button up here. And then I'm going to arrow over. That way it will let me select which disk we want, because if you have multiple HD20 disks, it may choose the wrong one. For example, I have an HD20 big, that's system 6, and we don't want that. So this is the one that I gave you, that you copied over, the HD system 3.2 disk. So I'm going to choose that. And now that's saved, I'm going to power off. And then power on. And there we are, now booted into System 3.2. And the same windows open automatically so you can find all your files. Now let's launch the app FlashTool. And we want to click Startup Sound. And don't make a mistake about what you click here. These are called radio buttons. Don't click the wrong thing. You don't want to accidentally overwrite something important. For example, if you overwrite the ROM code by accident without writing actual ROM code, then your machine won't boot, and then you won't be able to flash in system anymore, and then you'll have to pull the chips out and flash them in a dedicated programmer, which is really troublesome. So again, click Startup Sound. Then after that, we're going to click Select File. And then we're going to go to Startup Sounds, 1.30 seconds, and we're going to find our Quadra 700 normal sound right here. So click Open that. And we see the file size is given to us up here at the top, 28,665, which is smaller than 28,672, the limit. So no problems there. And now just click the Update ROM button. Gives you a confirmation dialog, and we'll click OK. And then it gives us this progress bar as it's flashing. And there we go, ROM update finished successfully. But we're not finished yet, and that's because it still thinks we are using a 666 millisecond long startup sound, which is what the short Quadra sound was set up for. So now that the startup sound has been flashed, we need to click ROM code. Okay, so we select ROM code right here. And then we're going to select File, go to the top level, and then we're going to choose, you can choose whichever you like, the happy icon or other icons. I'll just go with happy icon for now. But we need to choose a file that corresponds to the 1.3 second file. So just in case you forgot, we'll go ahead and look at the startup. See, it says 1.3 second sounds are code 4B. All right, so now we need to go to our code, happy icon, and 4B right there is the one that we need to choose. So we'll click Open, and it shows us the file size up here, 135, 168, and we see 135, 168. So the file size match. And then we just update ROM, click OK. And this will take a little bit longer to update. And there we go. ROM update finished successfully. Now we can quit out of here. And before we restart, what I will say is, once again, you have two folders filled with code. This folder is code that will generate the Happy Mac icon. You know, when you first boot, it has a little tiny icon of a Happy Mac there. This is the stock Happy Mac icon. And then you have all of these files which have different letters at the end of the name, and that of course corresponds to the sound files. There's one at the top that's named 64K stock code hyphen 64K stock.bin, and that is the stock 64K ROM for the Macintosh 128K and 512K. Never flash that on a Mac Plus. The machine won't boot if you do, and then you'll need a dedicated programmer like the T48 to flash your chips back into working condition again. Also, if you flash it to your Mac 512K, it's a stock ROM, so you won't have a custom boot chime or a custom startup icon at all. It's truly the stock ROM. And so that's why we're not going to touch this file. The other files are the ones that we're dealing with now. So I just wanted to explain that. Specifically the ones with the little letters at the end. And again, that's for you to program the right length of an audio file with them. Okay, we'll close this. And now we can restart. Ready? Beautiful! The full duration Quadra boot chime in all of its glory. Much better than the short one. There is a downside to flashing custom boot chimes to your ROM-inator, and I'll show that to you now by opening the app Full Paint and one of the documents that I created in it. And I'll make a change to my document so that when I close it, it will give me a system beep sound. So this is the way, the only reason I'm opening this is just to generate an error beep, which is the system beep. And you can hear that. It beeps twice to warn me of unsaved changes. We'll try that again. Bap, bap. You can hear the very first part of our Quadra boot chime is now the system beep. And it's not that great as a system beep. Great as a boot chime, but not as a system beep. But admittedly, some boot chimes will make a better system beep than others. For example, I'm now back in FlashTool. I'm going to flash Harold's Horns. It's a 1.3 second file. Go ahead and flash. See, the file size is the exact limit, 28672. That's the limit, but it'll work, so we'll go ahead and do that. And you hear a little beep. And you'll note that I didn't have to flash a ROM code after I flashed that sound because it was already, the ROM code is already set up for 1.30 second sounds. So I just flashed a different sound, but it's also 1.30 seconds. So in that case, you don't have to change the ROM code. And so if I restart, you can hear how it sounds. Kind of a neat boot chime, don't you think? And now if I open Full Paint again, we can hear how it sounds as a system beep. Make a change, close it. Kind of nice. Try it again. So that's what I mean. Some boot chimes will make a better system beep than others. And this one, I think, makes a pretty good one. Now I made other sounds for you in here. You could probably see that when I opened it last time, but 4 different categories, 1.097 seconds, 666 milliseconds, and 900 milliseconds. And if you go to 666 milliseconds, inside this folder, we can see that at the bottom it says stock 128K bong. That wasn't originally a part of the ROM-inator, and some of you may want to have the stock beep. Kind of a waste with the ROM-inator, but you can do it now. I actually extracted this from mini vMac because it was the best and loudest bong sound. And you can flash that one if you want to. You just have to remember to flash the appropriate code file for that. That code file is 2.8, right? It says 666 millisecond sounds are code 2.8. So that means if you flash and again, it doesn't have to be happy icon. You can go to the other icons here, and icon with cheese, right? And then it has a 2.8 code file. So you could flash that 2.8 code file, code with cheese, and that'll give you a different happy face icon with a big smiley. But if you flash, we just flashed 1.30 seconds, right? So if after that you flash one of these 666 millisecond startup sounds, and you forget to flash the code after that, the ROM code, what will happen is you'll hear 666 milliseconds of whatever sound you flashed, and then you'll hear the remainder time, all the way to the end of 1.30 seconds, of your previously flashed sound. So it's not going to damage your computer or anything like that. You're just going to hear some really strange sound, and that's why you just go back into FlashTool and you flash the correct ROM code file, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, so now what I'll do is I will let you hear the short Quadra boot chime that comes with the ROM-inator in comparison to the long Quadra boot chime and all of the other sounds that I created for you, including their system beeps. And that way you can compare and see which one you like.
Fascinating.
I spent a lot of time tweaking those sounds in Audacity to maximize volume without clipping. I think they turned out pretty great. And there's no limit to what you can create. By the way, if you make sounds that are of a different duration than the 4 categories that I set up for you, for example, 666 milliseconds, 900 milliseconds, 1.097 seconds, and 1.3 seconds, it's not a problem. You have 2 choices. The first option is to flash my silence file. So we go into Startup Sounds, 1.3 seconds, and here's my silence file. It's 1.30 seconds of silence, just like the file name says. And you would go ahead and then flash that. And after that, then you would go in and select your custom audio sound and flash that. So flash silence first to clear out everything, then flash your audio file. And once that's done, then you're going to need to choose a ROM code file that's closest in size to your sound file. So for example, if your sound file is 0.3 seconds, the closest existing ROM code file to that would be 2.8 at the end. Any file name, ROM code file with 2.8 at the end. This is intended for sound files that are up to 700 milliseconds, 0.7 seconds long. And so if you were to flash this and your sound file that you flashed is 0.3 seconds, then when you restart your computer, your sound file will play its boot chime for 0.3 seconds, and then there will be approximately 0.36 seconds of silence after that. And then when the silence is done, your Mac will continue booting. The second option is for people who don't want any silence at all played after your boot chime ends, making your boot time as fast as possible. To do that, we start by duplicating one of your code files, and that's going to depend upon which icon you want. But we'll just go with the happy icon and go up to File menu and duplicate that. Note that I'm booted from the hard disk 3.2 disk image that's in my archive, and you can do this on your vintage Mac if you want. And so here is the duplicated file. Then we need to open up our drive and go into Utilities and then Res Edit, and there's something called Fedit 3.2.1. Don't use Res Edit, use Fedit. And then we're going to go up here and open the file that we just created, which is in happy icon, and here's the copy. We're going to open that up, and then what we're going to have to do, this looks a bit intimidating, but it's actually not. It's actually not. We need to modify a single byte. Now if you notice here on the left, you've got the addresses, and then of course in the body over here you've got the hexadecimal content, and then the equivalent of the hexadecimal content is over here, which is called ASCII. So we're going to modify the hexadecimal content at address EF. So it says E0 is these first two, 1C is located, there's this 2-digit pair is located at E0. So basically all the way to the end. The 28 at the end, that will be EF. Okay, so basically what you need to do is look for E0 and then just go all the way to the end, and the last two digits there are the ones that we're going to need to change. And to determine the number that you're going to type here is done by the following formula. Number one, your sound duration in seconds multiplied by 60. And that will yield a number in decimal. And then step 2 is to convert your decimal number to hexadecimal. And step 3 is only if your sound file is longer than 700 milliseconds, you're going to reduce it by 3. In other words, subtract 3 from it. If it's less than 700 milliseconds, don't subtract anything. And then step 4 is type your hex number into the address EF, which would be right here. So for example, if your sound file was 0.3 seconds, then multiplied by 60, that's going to yield 18. Converting to hex, that's 12. And so what you would do is you would type 12 in here. Now before you can type anything, the way that this software works is you have to enable hex modify, and then you would type in 1, 2. This is just for the example, right? In the case of a 0.3 second startup file. And then you're going to end your modifications, and then you're going to write sector. I know it seems odd, but there is no file save. You want to write sector. And that's going to save your changes. Okay? And then if we close it and open it up again, see E0 go all the way to the end, there's 12. And then we need to just quit out of here and close all of this out so you can access your ROM code file. And what you want to do is you want to rename it so that it is going to be, instead of 2.8, it's going to be 1.2. And then of course on your sound file you should also put the number 1.2 so that you know to associate this code patched ROM code file with your new sound. And that's it. Now, although boot chimes play back perfectly, the same sound played back as a short system beep results in a bit of crackling, and we can hear that if we go to the Apple menu and then open up Control Panel, and then click on the sound slider over here. It's almost like there are CPU interrupts taking place while the sound is being played, and it gets worse when I move the arrow pointer around during playback. I asked Steve Chamberlain and Rob Braun about this, but there wasn't a good conclusion about what's causing it, so I just want to point out this as a possible caveat to some custom boot chimes, because some crackle more than others. What if you really like the Quadra boot chime, but you want a totally different, unrelated system beep sound? Good news! You can use SoundMaster version 1.5 with your Macintosh 512K or Plus. I put that app with sound files on a bootable MFS 800K disk image for you inside the Custom System Beeps folder in my zip archive. So we'll go ahead and boot Mini vMac with that now. And then go up to the Apple menu and choose Control Panel, and here's SoundMaster. Now, as I told you earlier, SoundMaster cannot change the boot chime, so you'll still need to flash that to your ROM-inator using FlashTool. But for everything else, as you can see here, SoundMaster gives you full control. Startup, restart, shutdown sounds, disk insert, disk eject, bad disk, and so on. And the surprisingly good part is that SoundMaster works just fine on system software older than what the developer says is officially supported. Now, down here towards the bottom, Finder sounds, which are denoted by the F at left, on all of these sounds here, empty trash being the first one here. These only work on system 6.0.4 or higher. But I confirmed that system beeps, which are part of the category up here with no F at left, the beep sound was a system beep. This works just fine when using SoundMaster version 1.5, which is what this version is, while booted into system file version 4.1 and Finder file version 5.3, which is the system software I have on this 800K MFS disk. Older system software like version 3.2 in the HD20 mode, that disk image I gave for you, that's too old to run SoundMaster, so you'll need system 4.1 and Finder 5.3. But I have it on this disk here, so you can copy this to other disk images if you want, or create your own HD20 version with this system software on it so that you can use SoundMaster. And it uses surprisingly little RAM. For example, if I choose the stock 128K beep and enable that, the memory used section is right here, and it's showing it only takes 4.27K. That's right, 4.3K approximately of RAM. Now that's going to vary a little bit based upon the different sound files you choose. So we can go ahead and play this one. And this one is set to 22 kilohertz, but some of the other ones require a different setting. I know that these are 11 kilohertz.
Energize.
If you played at 22 kilohertz, it's going to sound a little bit strange, so like that. But you have full control over your sounds. And you can see how the memory is changing based upon the sounds that we choose. Scream takes a little bit more at 10K. Cricket takes even less at only 3.5K. So, have fun! You can only flash the stock 64K ROM to a ROM-inator installed in a Macintosh 128K or 512K like this. Never flash it to a Macintosh Plus because it's not compatible and it'll give you all manner of headaches. But for the 128K and 512K Macs with a ROM-inator, using the stock ROM can be quite fun to enjoy it in its original state. Just keep in mind you're not going to have a bootable ROM disk or custom boot chime or custom startup icon or any of the features that the ROM-inator offers because, well, the ROM will be in its factory state. But there are some hoops to jump through when it comes time for you to restore the original 128K patched version ROM back to the ROM-inator. Note that all ROM code files have the word code in their file name, along with a .bin file name extension, just like these here. But there's only one file that has 64K in its file name, code-64K-stock, and that's the 64K ROM I'm talking about. All other ROM code files are the 128K ROM. Apple shipped the 128K ROM in the Macintosh 512K E for enhanced, and the Mac Plus. But the 128K ROM code files that you flash to your ROM-inator, as I said before, are patched. So you can have a bootable ROM disk, custom boot chime, and custom startup icon. Before flashing the 64K ROM, please be sure to read the text file that I prepared for you named 64K ROM Special Instructions. That provides you with all the details. But basically, once you have the 64K ROM flashed, in order to use FlashTool, you have to boot from an MFS formatted floppy, which also has the HD20 in it, to make your Mac HFS aware. And you can only boot from such a disk on a 512K Mac, not the 128K Mac. To make that super easy for you, I prepared a bootable MFS 800K disk image in my zip archive within the folder named 64K ROM to 128K ROM. Just boot your 512K Mac from that, launch FlashTool, and flash the ROM code file of your choice. And that brings this video to a close. I hope the content helps you to get the most out of your ROM-inator. And if you don't already have a ROM-inator, head on over to Carol's Mac Mods and snag one today. No, K-Koba did not pay me or ask me to say anything. In fact, I didn't even consult with him at all during the making of this video. I just think it's a fantastic product that's worth having. I'd like to thank Steve Chamberlain and Rob Braun for making time to answer my technical questions that I put forth to them during the initial testing phase in preparation for this video. I'd also like to thank JDM74 over at the Tinker Different Forum for very kindly recording in a professional way the boot chime of his Macintosh 2 FX and then giving me permission to morph it into a volume maximized RAW file for you in Audacity, and I put that in my zip archive, so enjoy. I'd also like to thank David Maunder for providing me very kind permission to use his boot chime music as background tracks in this video. You probably heard some of that, and you will find links to each of those tracks in the text description. Check those out because they sound more fantastic without me talking over them. I just happened to run across them when I was making this video, and I wasn't even searching for them, and I said, man, this is perfect for this video and sounds great too, so be sure to check those out. And I would also like to say a sincere, heartfelt thank you to some really generous people who have so graciously donated to this channel by PayPal over the past several months when I was unable to release a video, and you'll be seeing their names in the ending credits in a few seconds here. But gentlemen, I am overwhelmed by your kindness, and I truly do apologize for having taken so long to release a video for you. But speaking of videos, I have many more planned on topics such as, wow, what is this? This is a replacement power supply, newly created in the past month actually, or was it this month? I believe it was released, July 2024. Replacement power supply for the Macintosh SE and SE30. This is more powerful than the stock supply. And as you can see here, we've got some black boxes. These are certified Meanwell power modules that are potted with silicone to enhance the thermal transfer and make sure they're more resilient against vibration. It also keeps out dust and humidity too. And he really did a fantastic job on this. It includes the harness already pre-soldered, and these are very thick wires, brand new too. And maybe if you have an SE30, I've not had this problem on the SE, but sometimes you'll get very old wires. As they age, the resistance in the wires increases, and so by buying this, you're getting a brand new wire harness as well. And so you're assured that the wires are not going to be reducing your voltage in any way due to being old. And the best part is that compared to the Seasonic, which I did a video on a number of years ago, this is so easy. You might need to do a little soldering to put a connector on in accordance with the metal chassis that you have, but this thing is compatible with all of the chassis for the SEs and SE30s, which means Sony, Aztec, and Hitachi. All of the metal frames are a little bit different, as you know, and this will just drop into all of them. He had all of the metal chassis and designed the circuit board so that it would work in all of them. And boy, the best part is compared to the Seasonic, this has no fan. It doesn't need one. The Seasonic has a fan, and although it's not too noisy, it does come on and it is audible. But this, it doesn't have a fan, so it's totally silent. The only sound you'll hear is from your case fan, and if you swap that out for an Noctua, well, it should be fairly quiet. So I plan to do a video on it, but for those of you who can't wait, I put a link to the seller's eBay page in the text description below. And I have exchanged emails with him, and I've come to know him. And Chris, you did a fantastic job on this. Next, I hope to do a video about my Macintosh 2 CI. Now, I have been doing a lot of testing, and I still have more testing to do. But if you can see this here, this power supply is here. And then if you go up slowly, you can see the card closest to the power supply is a cache card, Apple cache card. And then the next one up, the middle card, is a Radius Thunder 24 GT, which is, if you exclude Photoshop acceleration, which this doesn't have the DSPs for that, but this is one of the fastest new bus graphics cards you can buy. And then in the back, that's the amazing one there. That long card, that's the full body width of the Macintosh 2 CI, is a Radius Rocket, on loan to me from channel supporter Frank Conforti. And man, this is a 33 megahertz. He bought a new CPU for it because he had repurposed the original CPU for something else. This is the full FPU version, 33 megahertz, and I bought some purple RAM to put in it, so all of the slots are filled with the same size RAM, so you can get maximum throughput in there. And this is really a stunning card. I'd never used a Radius Rocket until Frank so graciously loaned one to me, and it can act as an accelerator, or it can act as a second Mac that would be like a Quadra 700 inside your 2 CI. So I plan to do a video on that, and it's going to be an exciting one, so stay tuned. But not only that, I also have waiting in the wings my upgrades video for the Apple IIc. This is my Apple IIc here. And I have my Mockingboard. For those of you who don't know, the Mockingboard is a board that allows the Apple II to finally have good audio. And I'm really a Mac user at heart, and I've only recently got into Apple IIs. Thank you, Javier Rivera. Thank you, Jonathan Adar. Thank you, Mark Jositis. You've been helping me in my Apple II understanding. But yeah, the out of the box audio is not great, but with a Mockingboard, at least for the games that support it, it's better than vintage Mac audio. Really quite good. And I have other upgrades too, such as this Apple IIc VGA, so you can connect the output to a VGA monitor. And I have one. You've probably seen my earlier video where I used my Dell 17-inch monitor with the grayscale adapter and Micron Exceed card and my SE30. The same monitor can work with this guy. And it took me a while to finally acquire one, but really fantastic. So I had to edit my video after filming this segment because I forgot to include one more thing. I got this letter pack from Italy with some very beautiful stamps on it, by the way. And inside are little tiny goodies. These are replacement gears for your Apple 800K and 1.44 megabyte auto inject floppy drives. And one of the first videos that I did about replacement gears focused on this gear creator who's based in Italy. And there was nothing wrong with his original gear necessarily. Not to the naked eye anyway. When you looked under a microscope, you could see tiny little bubbles. They didn't compromise the integrity of the gear, but I thought it was still quite good. And then later, after that, Keikoba, Carol's Mac Mods, came out with his Tuno gear, which was an incredible step up in quality because there were no imperfections that I could see under a microscope at all. And well, I received this letter pack because the seller in Italy has recently updated his gears as of May this year, 2024. And under a microscope, I found that these are, in terms of quality, now on par with the Tuno gear. And he really paid a lot of attention to detail. You can't really see it with the naked eye, but he even put a little Apple logo and sunk it into the gear. It's very, very tiny. And when I was looking at it with my lens and microscope, I was kind of surprised to see it. Wow, he put that in there. But I couldn't spot any significant imperfections at all, no bubbling or anything like that. And he sent me two types. One is transparent or semi-transparent, and the other one is a very bright white. And I think he said he used titanium dioxide to get the brightest white. But anyway, I just want to mention that for those of you who've watched my original video about the Italian gear, the link to eBay that I put there is still valid. It's just that he has updated those gears. So not only is the quality good, but his pricing is hard to beat. So I put a link for you in the text description below, so you can check that out. All said, folks, I have a lot more content planned, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And thank you for watching this video today. Once again, I do hope that it is helpful to you with your ROM-inator. And be sure to buy one if you don't already have one. So I wish all of you a wonderful week. Take care, folks.